not least, we have Guangchi Xing talking about finite frequency sensitivity kernels.
All right, thanks for coming and thanks for the introduction. Today I'm going to talk about the seismic inversion. In particular, the finite frequency sensitivity kernel, about what it is, why we care about it, and how to compute it. And let's get started from this picture of my hometown. So I'm from Tianjin. It's one of the most modern cities in China. And in my hometown, there's a gigantic tower called the Sky Tower. And it is a symbol of Tianjin, just like the Statue of Liberty to the New York City. And it's actually a TV tower. It's transmitting TV signals and covers the entire city. So when I was a kid, I always wondered why the Sky Tower is so high. Well, an intuitive answer would be to prevent the signal from being blocked by other tower buildings. But what's the point of building much taller than the others? You can see the picture right here. So, and even if the signal is blocked by one skyscraper or two, the wave can diffract to get around it. So that wouldn't even be a problem at all. So why on earth is this Sky Tower so tall? So let's talk about it. So we have a transmitter right here, and we have a TV right here. If we consider the wave theory, which is an infinite frequency approximation, then we got good pictures on TV. So everything's good. But in reality, the frequency of the signal is always finite. So, for example, this signal can have a sinusoidal waveform like this one. According to the Huygens principle, the wave can bend itself voluntarily. So, and this will lead to another waveform with a time shift. When these two phases are close to each other, this shift is pretty small. In particular, when the shift is less than 90 degrees, these two waveforms are in phase with each other. So in other words, this green waveform actually enhances the signal. So we still got good pictures right here, even better. And actually, for the waves travel within this football-shaped area, the phase shift is always less than 90 degrees. So, and this area is the so-called Fresnel zone. However, if the wave is reflected rather than transmitted, it's going to be a different story, since the reflection itself will bring about an additional 90 degrees of phase shift. So you can see the waveform right here. Let me flip back and forth. So this is transmission, and this is reflection. You can see the shift of this green waveform. And the consequence is that, in this case, these two waveforms are canceling each other. So if you have a reflector within this Fresnel zone, the signal is going to be reduced. But of course, having some small reflectors in this area is not going to be the end of the world. But as long as we don't have a huge one. But unfortunately, we do have a huge reflector in here, and its name is called the ground. So the TV no longer works. And to fix this problem, we got to keep these huge reflectors out of this Fresnel zone. And of course, obviously, it is too heavy. So the workaround is to build a transmitter that is high enough to avoid this ground reflection. And that's the reason why we have the Sky Tower that is extraordinarily tall, not to clear the ray path from other tall buildings, but to clear the entire Fresnel zone from the ground. Okay, so we basically have the same story for seismology. Not only the ray path, so everything in this Fresnel zone contributes to the seismogram recorded at the receiver. And the other way around, the data misfit should be projected back to the entire Fresnel zone, not just the ray path. Okay, and because every point in this area is responsible. However, this responsibility has some sort of variation within this Fresnel zone, and this responsibility is also called sensitivity. So, and quantitatively, a sensitivity kernel can show us how much each single grid point is responsible for the seismic waveform, and that's the reason why we care about the sensitivity kernel. And the target of this study is to develop an algorithm to compute the sensitivity kernel for both velocity and attenuation using a method called the adjoint state method. So let's talk about this. So adjoint state method. First, what is adjoint? So to illustrate it, let's just forget about these boring equations and let's talk about something interesting. Let's talk about food. So Kung Pao chicken It is one of the most famous Chinese dishes worldwide. And today I'll teach you 2 recipes of Kung Pao chicken, which I learned from the chef of Penn Express. So first, let's simplify this problem. So let's say Kung Pao chicken is just the stir-fried spicy peanut chicken. Okay? So recipe number 1, we start from some chicken and we marinate it with some spicy sauce, so the chicken becomes spicy chicken. And we stir-fry the spicy chicken with some peanuts, and we got this Kung Pao chicken. Now recipe number 2. This time we start from some peanuts, and we process this peanuts with a special secret procedure called question mark. And then we stir-fry them with some chicken, and we got another Kung Pao chicken. So these 2 dishes, although they're different from each other, if they can give me the same tasting experience, then we say that this question mark procedure is the adjunct of this spicy marinade. Now think about this question mark. So what should it be? Actually, the answer is pretty simple. It's still spicy marinating. So you first make the peanut spicy and then mix them with the chicken. That basically gives you the same taste. So we say that this spicy marinade is a self-adjunct operator. Another example, if an operator can be written in the form of a matrix, then its adjunct is just its transpose. For example, these 2 operators or 2 matrices are adjunct to each other. Let's see what exactly these operators do. This one, when it is applied on 5-element vector, it's actually a process of truncation. And this adjunct on the other way, when it's applied on this one, it's actually padding zeros. So truncation and zero padding are adjunct to each other. So let's summarize a little bit. So roughly, this adjunct, it can sort of preserve the amplitude operation, like making things spicy. Its adjunct is still making things spicy. And on the other hand, the adjunct can more or less cancel the phase operation, like truncation and zero padding are adjunct to each other. And hopefully you guys have some intuition about what adjunct is. Now let's get back to the seismic. So the sensitivity kernel is generated by the interaction between 2 wave fields, a forward and an adjunct. So let's first consider, for example, let's consider a 2D case. So this has a latency. So we have a source, we have a receiver, and we have a data recorded at the receiver. So now let's start from a homogeneous initial model, and let's do the forward modeling. And doesn't work. Okay. Let's do the forward modeling. Now we got a forward wave field and a synthetic. We can see that there's a residual between the data and synthetic, which suggests that our initial model is not good enough. So this is the forward model. So what's the adjunct? Okay. Now this is the adjunct wave field. So basically, the forward wave field starts from the source and propagates all over the place. And the adjunct wave field shrinks to the location of the receiver. Meanwhile, the forward wave field has everything 0 at the beginning, while the adjunct wave field has everything 0 at the final moment. And so we can actually flip the time axis of this adjunct wave field and model it in the reverse time order. So this time reversal adjunct wave field is excited by a adjunct source at the location of the receiver. And this adjunct source is just the residual between the data and synthetic. So we basically propagate the residual back into the model space. Then let's see how exactly the waves propagate. So in a lossless case, without attenuation, so we can actually prove that this lossless propagate is a self-adjunct operator. And the meaning is that these 2 wave fields, they have different sources, they have different initial final conditions, but they are propagating the waves under exactly the same law. Then let's think about something more realistic. We take the seismic attenuation into account. Then clearly the forward wave field is attenuated, so the total energy of the wave field is decreasing. And based on our very non-trivial derivation, we can prove that the adjunct of the attenuating propagator is actually a compensating propagator. But this has some problem with it. Use the mouse.
Yeah, try using a mouse.
Try using mouse. just get stuck.
Animation part is so big, computer needs some time to respond. Escape all time.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
You know what? I'm sure we'll do this for slides. I should give it that one. That would be my Jude, and I am the person that would be my Jude. Entirely on the that's definitely. Don't worry about this. That's one thing I
Okay, all right. All right, I'll give you a couple of minutes. All right, so where we are? Okay, all right. So basically, Anyway, let's just. It's still stuck here. Anyway, let's say we can actually prove that the agent of the attenuating operator is actually a compensating operator. So in this way, the forward wave field is attenuating, but the adjoint wave field is compensating or anti-attenuating. And so basically, in this way, we can have both forward and adjoint wave field, and we take the interaction and we take the time integral, and then we got this sensitivity kernel. Still done. Okay. All right. I'll just finish up. So finally, we can get this sensitivity kernel for both velocity and attenuation. And so remember, our initial model is not accurate because the synthetic doesn't match the data. And the meaning of this kernel is that these kernels tell us how to update the initial model to reduce this residual. For example, for this velocity model, you should decrease the velocity in this blue area, increase the velocity in this blue area, and decrease in this yellow area. And then the fitting between the data and synthetic will be better. And we have, of course, we have the same thing for attenuation. And so in this way, these kernels can actually be incorporated into a seismic tomography workflow to iteratively refine an initial model to match the data and finally get a high resolution seismic images, either for velocity or attenuation. Okay, and some take-home messages. Anyway, I'll just finish up. So, in this study, we discovered, we developed a new algorithm. You just remember the forward, adjoint, and interaction, and mission computation. And these kernels are the foundations for the seismic tomography. And around 15 years ago, well, it's totally. Anyway, around 15 years ago, the velocity kernels helped some seismologists discover some low velocity anomalies in the lower mantle. And these anomalies are interpreted later as some new discovered mantle plumes. And this discovery significantly fires up the development of the plume hypothesis. And now we have some attenuation kernels in our pocket as well. And hopefully it can help us discover something exciting, say like a gas chimney or some partial melt in the mantle or some high temperature ice sheet. Who knows? And all right, that's all for my presentation. And sorry about it. I was thinking there.
I was curious if you applied this method to the radio tower. Is that a way to kind of calibrate, or think about if you made a little radio tower that's going to interact with the ground, can you do some actual experiments like that?
Well, I didn't do that. I'm not in the ECE department.
No.
Yeah, actually, one thing to notice that for the radio stuff, the air is pretty homogeneous. So the problem is much more similar in that case. But the Earth is very heterogeneous. So the Fresnel zone looks pretty kinky, actually, in the real world. Not like it really happened.
Right, yeah. I was just thinking of having analogs where you can't really see what's in the subsurface.
Yeah, right.
You could make artificial mediums where you design okay, this is how heterogeneous the materials are. But I guess you could do the same thing in an entire computer framework too. You don't have to have a physical analog.
Yeah, that's pretty good point. Go ahead.
What are some of the main improvements over current seismic tomography you think you get from 3D?
So basically, currently, so in this way, we take the finite frequency effect into account. So the resultant model will be more accurate and has higher resolution. In the current seismic tomography, we basically using this method only for the velocity. But in this study, we have the kernel for attenuation. So it will provide some additional information about the subsurface structure. That's all.
What are the dimensions of this sensitivity, kernel or the Fresnel siren?
Well, that depends on the frequency of your signal. This can be anything. Yeah, you can for high frequency, you can investigate small scale exploration scale, and for low frequency 1 Hz, you can talk about the global or regional scale. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about it. Whole disaster.